Okay, good morning to those overseas, and good evening, late afternoon here in Israel. And clearly, while the situation in Israel and Yeshiva particularly has begun to improve and routine is gradually transitioning back to some degree of normalcy, so to speak, with the Gush and Migdalos, we are well aware that this is unfortunately not the case everywhere, and thought it was how fitting it would be to share the Yeshiva's Torah, right before Shavuot, Rav Shavuot, with our alumni and parents overseas, as we continue to daven for a refuah shalem to those in need and an end to this pandemic. So we thank everybody for participating, and of course for Rav Mosheh Lichtenstein for making the time to speak. Rav Mosheh Lichtenstein's topic is the Haftorah of the second day of Shavuot, and then we'll be followed by Rav Moshe Targin and Rav Ezra Bick, Rav Mordechai Friedman, with a break in between. So on that note, the screen is yours, Rav Moshe. B'vakasha.
Okay, Toda Rabba, thank you. I'll begin by, of course, seconding Yoel's sentiments about it's very difficult at times to be in one place and to feel the pulse of someplace else. And normally, life here, there's a lot of communication, travel back and forth. So now there's no travel. There's telephones. There's Zoom. Nevertheless, it's not always simple to follow the sentiments and the deeper feelings, not the superficial ones, the deeper ones. So obviously, we hope and for things to get better, and obviously we hope that nevertheless we are now a Shachen Karov and not only in Ach Rachok thanks to technology. I also will begin by saying I did put on a suit in honor of this gathering in Kol HaKavod. I just came back from the first wedding I've gone to since everything began. Actually, I rushed out in the middle of the wedding, so here I am. But it's very fitting. Every Shavuot, that Baruch Hashem, a kid in Yeshiva is getting married again to a girl from Migdalos, and Baruch Hashem, things look somewhat more optimistic. So, I published a book of Haftorah, as some of you probably know. I made a promise in the introduction to write chapters on Yom Tov Sheni Haftorah in the English version. So in the meantime, there's only the Hebrew version, but this is an attempt to somehow fulfill some of that debt and hopefully become Drisha Bichtav in the not too distant future. The Haftorah, second day Shavuot, is very perplexing. I'll begin by explaining what I mean by that statement. But first, let me just actually point out to the source of the Haftorah. A moment, like all that. Just 1 second. Like all the Haftorot of the Chagim, the Aleph Pri Masechet, the Megillah, the Flamed Aleph, everything is over there. The Haftorot of the regular Shabbatot are the Gemara never tells us what they are. The only Haftorot which the Gemara dictates to us which text to use are the Haftorot of the Chagim. And here, the Gemara says the following. I'll read and translate. This is Masechet Megillah, the Flamed Aleph. Here it isn't, right? If you follow the arrow, you can see it. Ba'atzeret and Chag HaShavuot, we read in the Torah Shiva Shavuot. That's Pashat Re'eh, Dvarim Perek Tet Zayin. Umaftirin b'Chabakuk. And Haftorah is the last chapter of Chabakuk, Perek Gimel. Achirim Omrim, a second opinion, B'Chodesh HaShlishi Yulein, Shmos Perek Yutes, Umaftirin b'Merkava. And Haftorah is from the beginning of Yechezkel. Ha'idra, nowadays, Dika Treyomei, now that we have 2 days, and this was written in Bavel, Avdien Ketavai, we do both of these, the Ifcha, just reverse the order. In other words, the first day we lay B'Chodesh HaShlishi, meaning the story of Matan Torah and Sefer Shemot, and we use the Haftorah Yechezkel Perek Aleph, as you can see. And the second day we read Shiva Shavuot, which is Pashat Re'eh, and Chabakuk, the Haftorah of Chabakuk. Okay, now let's try to understand this a bit. What's going on? What's going on regarding the Kriyas HaTorah is pretty straightforward. the Torah describes Shavuos really twice. Once in Vayikra, once in Dvarim. In both places, the Torah talks about the agricultural element of Thanksgiving, thank the Kadosh Baruch Hu for the harvest, and essentially in Tanakh and in various halachot, the focus of Chag Shavuot is really the Thanksgiving, Chag HaKatzir, the festival of the harvest. Chazal connected to Mamad Har Sinai because of the dates. We all know that the Torah was given either on the 6th or 7th day of Sivan. So Chazal connected it to the historical event. And therefore, the two opinions really reflect two different approaches. We have two elements of Chag Shavuot. One is the element of Mamad Har Sinai, Matan Torah. The other is the element of Thanksgiving. So one day we learn Aliyah LaRegel and Chag HaKatzir. In other words, we thank the Kadosh Baruch Hu for our sustenance and our lives, essentially. And of course, this year it's doubly meaningful. And then the other day we talk about Mamad Har Sinai and Gilui Shechina. So you have kriyot, two elements. So it's pretty straightforward. What happens with Haftorah? So here we find something totally different. We have first day we learn the Merkavah, and the second day we learn Chabakuk Perek Gimel. I'm going to talk about Chabakuk mainly, but in a sense we'll start from the Merkavah briefly to understand what's the significance of Chabakuk. Why do we learn the Merkavah on Shavuos? The answer is pretty clear, but let me preface with a story or a question to explain it. One of the first questions I remember ever asking my father, questions in learning that is, was as a child. I asked him once, walking to shul Pesach morning, if I remember, why do we say in Dayenu, Ilu Kervanu Fnei Har Sinai, V'natanu the Torah Dayenu? What kind of a Dayenu is that? Everything else I understand. I understand. No, all that, or those I understand. But if we got to Mamad Har Sinai and it wouldn't have been Matan Torah, so it would be meaningless. It's like going to a theater and they've canceled the show. So what's happened? Nothing. Like you can't say Ilu halachti la teatron and I didn't see the show. It would be a meaningless thing to do. So what does it mean? Ilu kirvanu fnei Har Sinai v'lo natan lanu et Torah. Har Sinai would have lost all of its meaning. Okay, that was a 9-year-old or whatever I was then. Obviously, the answer is pretty clear. That's what he told me then, and what as an adult I've also figured out. Mamad Har Sinai was a Gilui Shechina independent of Matan Torah. It was because Baruch Hu gave us, not to give us the Torah in Mamad Har Sinai, it was revelation. Right, in Sefer Shemot, you could say that's a division of labor between Shemot, Perek Yutet, which describes how Bnei Yisrael come and the whole ceremony and all the circumstances surrounding the mountain, and Perek Chaf. Perek Chaf is the content, is the details, it's Aseret Dibros, and Perek Yutet is the description of the event prior, the 6 days before Mamad Har Sinai, before the actual Matan Torah. The same paradigm repeats itself in Sefer Dvarim. If you look in Parshas Vaschanan, you'll see Perek Dalet describes V'ahar bo'er ba'esh elev shamayim choshech hanan v'arafel, and so on and so forth. It describes basically the Gilui Shechina, how the Kadosh Baruch Hu descends on Har Sinai. In Perek Hey, it then describes the actual Matan Torah, and once more repeats the Aseret Dibros. But the Torah basically tells us two stories, one of revelation and one of transmission of Torah. And the story of revelation is important, independent of transmission, and transmission is important, independent of revelation. And therefore we say, Ilu Kirvanu Fnei Har Sinai, V'haya Gilui Shechina, and you would have gotten the Torah some other way. We would have gotten the Torah by other means. Moshe Rabbeinu would have gone and received it and transmitted it through different channels. So that's basically the point of Mamad. The Mamad Har Sinai is important in and of itself. According to the Ramban, there's a special mitzvah aseh d'oraisa, and maybe also mitzvah lo ta'aseh, to forget Mamad Har Sinai, not to forget Torah. That's a different story. Rather, there's a pasuk in Sefer Dvarim, Zachor Tishkach Yom Asher Mata Fnashecha Bechorev, Perik Dal Pasuk Tes. The Ramban claims a person has to remember daily Mamad Har Sinai. And the Ramban has slightly different reasons to what I'm saying now, but the point is that he's trying to emphasize that the Mamad Har Sinai itself is important, independent of Torah being delivered at that same point in time. Now, this is what happens in the Merkava. In the Merkava, we describe a Gilu Shechina. We don't describe Mamad Har Sinai, and the Merkava doesn't happen necessarily on Vav Sivan. Merkava is a daily, it's constant. But the Merkava describes what it feels to see a divine revelation, what it feels to be in God's presence when you feel and you see, you're aware of His presence. What does it mean, kaviyachol, to have a vision of God? Which is what they had in Mamad Har Sinai. Let me remind you that in Shmos Perek Chav Daled, it talks about Vayechezu et Elokei Yisrael v'tachat raglav ki maseh livnat hasapir uchetzem hashamayim latohar. I can't translate the pasuk. Whatever it means, they had a vision of divine glory, which looked like some kind of marble or whatever it looked like, some kind of reflection. And this is Mamad Har Sinai, and the Merkava is the same thing. It's some kind of vision, obviously metaphorical, etc., but it's a vision which is trying to, we saw God revealed to us. And Shavuos is not only about receiving Torah and being given the mandate to develop Torah, to say Chidushim, and it's not only about the wonderful content of Torah. Shavuos is also about simply feeling God's presence. The idea that the sky is torn apart and you can look upstairs. It's simply be able to feel and to feel the presence, and that's why we lay in the Merkava. Now the same is true of Habakkuk, but and we read it for the same reasons, though with a big difference. Before I talk about that difference, I'd like to emphasize that the Haftorot here are doing something which is wholly new in a sense. Because even though I mentioned briefly Shmot Chav Daled, but it seems to be clear the basic focus in the Chumash, but Mamad Har Sinai, Matan Torah, really is the content. It's really the delivery of Torah. So even though both things happened, but and broadly speaking, Mamad Har Sinai in the Chumash is essentially by Daber Elokim Dvarim Ha'ele, etc. And when the Torah talks in Parshas Eikev about remembering Mamad Har Sinai, Aseres HaDvarim, and the Chumash broadly emphasizes two things: A, man's receiving mitzvot and the content. Now, I'm overstating the point in a sense, and maybe let me be a bit more careful in my formulation. If you look at Mamad Har Sinai in Sefer Shemot, it has two continuations, right? From Perek Chaf, then Perek Chaf Aleph, or simply put, Parshas Mishpatim continues Parshas Yisro. We finished Mamad Har Sinai, right? Bnei Yisrael tell Moshe Rabbeinu, we're too scared, we're too much in awe. Kravatave Shama, it's scary. Who can watch God and not tremble? Therefore, you go ahead and be the intermediary. And then begins Ve'ela Mishpatim Asher Tasim Lifnehem. These are the laws that you deliver to them. And Rashi says over there, Ve'ela, the Vav, Musif Al Niyan Mishon. The Vav tells us a continuation. It's not a new beginning. It's not a new chapter. It's really a continuation. Because the natural continuation of Mamad Har Sinai is simply mitzvot. And there's a second description later on which emphasizes really the Gilui Shechina. And the continuation of that, of course, is, the second description is what I said before, the description in the end of Parshas Mishpatim, what's called Brit HaGanot, covenant of the vessels, or whatever you want to call it. The natural, there it emphasizes.
Rav Mosheh, you froze for a minute.
What?
You froze for a minute. Can you repeat the last two things you were just saying? It froze.
Okay, apparently I shouldn't be saying them. Shmos Perek Chav Daled emphasizes Gilui Shechina, viewing God, feeling the revelation, and it's called Brit HaGanot, covenant of the vessels, or whatever you want to call it, that's a continuation also. The natural continuation of that is the Mishkan. But as soon as we finish that, and we continue a week later, but the next chapter, of course, is Pashas Truma. So what the dual description, one continuation talks about God dwelling amongst us, taking the revelation and making it more constant and distilling it into the Mishkan. And the first one is the laws. So you have in the Torah both elements, but nevertheless, what you have in the Torah, you don't have the sense of transcendental glory. You don't have the sense of God being so high and above man. You take for the moment what I described before. They had a view of the divine glory, and they made a feast. Now, some view it positively, some view it negatively. But the point is that they're not awestruck. Maybe they're too cavalier, maybe on the contrary, maybe they were doing the right thing. But either way, they're viewing the essence of the sky, they're viewing divine glory. They have this kind of vision, which we don't quite know what it is, and they sit down to eat. They're not quaking in their boots. There's no fear and trembling. The way the Rambam describes prophecy, that you lose control of your bodily faculties, that's not what's happening over there. We talk about the Merkavah, and now this is what the Nevi'im introduce. I think in general, it's characteristic. To give an example, the Torah talks about Brias HaOlam more in terms of what it does for man, how creation benefited man and provided him with his needs. Yeshayahu describes creation in terms of transcendental glory, etc. In Yeshayahu, creation reflects upon God's glory. In Bereshis, it helps man be able to survive, etc. And it's true here also. In the Chumash, we A, get the Torah that we need, B, because Baruch Hu comes to reside amongst us. So it's obviously it's incomprehensible, and let's not talk about metaphysics now. At the end of the day, man has ownership of the Mishkan, right? Man builds the Mishkan, man consecrates it, man approaches God over there, and you have to go to Yechezkel and to Yeshayahu for God to be so distant and so far and so above and so transcendental. And when the Rav writes Kadosh, 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 transcendentally, he's quoting Yeshayahu. He's not quoting the Chumash. Right? The Chumash is Kiam Kadosh Atal Hashem Elokecha Lo Tevashel Gdiva Chalev Imo. Right? The Kedusha, the Chumash works with different channels. The Kedusha of Yeshayahu is this kind of I read it Hashem Yoshev Kisei Ram V'Nisa. I see God in this grand throne high above me, and so on and so forth. And this is what the Haftorah come to do. The Haftorah would come to replace it's like this. The Haftorah would come to complement the perspective of the Chumash, in which God is looking after man, and God is taking care of man, and God is coming to babysit for man. He's coming to help man with, to give him an instruction manual for the world, etc. In the Haftorahs, we come and say the reverse. No, man looks above. God is so far above. He is huge. He's immensely above. He's transcendental, etc. And don't forget that perspective. It was the perspective which the Torah de-emphasizes. The Nevi'im come to emphasize and to create this balance. And that's why the Haftorah, both of them, describe things, they're most incomprehensible. In a sense, right, the Merkava, one of the greatest paradoxes of the Haftorah, the first day, it is prohibited to learn it. It's prohibited to teach it. You can't teach it except if you happen to be tremendous philosopher, Kabbalist, etc., and you have such a student, and it's totally prohibited, al pi halacha, to discuss it in public. Nevertheless, we do it every Shavuos. Probably the assumption everyone's sleeping. We basically pronounce in public the entire Merkava. And the reason so it's incomprehensible. No one really understands it. No one can really tell us what it's all about. But it's important for us to recognize that we don't understand it. Since the point of learning the Haftorah Shavuos morning is we should recognize that we don't understand. We should basically realize that we don't understand, and therefore this is part of what adds to that perspective. Okay, now having said that, Chagai is doing the same thing. Habakkuk is doing the same thing, but with a major difference. And but here I'd like to continue. I said a moment ago, one of the great paradoxes of this Haftorah is it's extremely difficult. It's the most difficult Haftorah to understand the Hebrew. Anyone who doesn't understand the Hebrew, it's not because of a language barrier. It's because the Hebrew is it's extremely difficult to understand. If you take a Mikros Gedolos and you take some contemporary Perushim, you still, and every phrase, there are 3-4 different opinions. Anything beyond to the obvious, anything which isn't obvious, there's like 5, 6, 7 opinions how to explain the word linguistically and thematically. What's he talking about? What's exactly what is he describing? The description of what? Right? When he talks about God being angry at the rivers, which river? What kind of anger? It's enigmatic. It's totally enigmatic. This is very strange in Haftorah. The whole point of Haftorah, essentially, and I wrote about this in the introductory chapter of the book. The point of Haftorah is to provide guidance. It's spiritual guidance. The role of Haftorah, in a sense, is like a drush and shul nowadays. It's to give a timely message to the audience how they should be Avodas Hashem. It's like having a rabbi who like the Haftorah Habakkuk is like having a rabbi who gives a drush and no one understands. His English is too difficult, like the Rav, I guess. The language is too difficult, and also the themes are too deep. In other words, we take Haftorah and then we choose a text that you can't understand. It seems to be self-defeating. I don't know what to say for sure. What I can say is I think the following: that the Haftorah of the Chagim, it's not only to give us a message, it's also to express the Kedusha of the Chag. In other words, the Haftorah is what we call in Halacha Mikra Kodesh, part of declaring the essence of the day. It's part of basically Mikra Kodesh, to make it Kadosh, to sanctify it. And therefore, we prefer something which we feel expresses the idea better, even if it's a more difficult text. In other words, we prefer here, what we prefer in this Haftorah is accuracy and choosing an important statement over the Balabas understanding it. And he'll just have to trust Habakkuk that it really is important. Now, I highly recommend trying to understand Haftarah. I'll try to help you in a few minutes, but just say at the end of the day, a good Haftarah is really difficult, and I don't think anyone can say anything with too great certainty. Okay, now let's start. I'll share the screen here, the text for a moment. I don't promise to do it the whole time. You should have come with the Tanakh, but simply without eye contact. Eye contact with Habakkuk is not going to help me to be able to get my thoughts across. So I'll put some of the text. We'll go back and forth, and I'll try to maybe split the screen if I remember how to do that. One moment. Okay, this is the this is the text itself. As you can see, I'm not going to translate now. I will choose a few in a moment, a few psukim which I want, and focus upon them. Now it begins. It begins with a. It begins with a description. This is Tfilah Chabakuk on the Vil Shigionot. What does Shigionot mean? Not exactly clear. It's a musical note. It's like musical instructions to the Levim, or it means he's apologizing for things he said previously in the Sefer. Whatever it is, this is a Tfilah Chabakuk. Now, let me give a 2 minutes background here. What's going on in Chabakuk? Chabakuk deals. It's the whole Sefer is 3 chapters. The first 2 of them deal with the problem of theodicy, Tzadik V'Ralo, Rasha V'Tovlo, or more specifically, the suffering of Am Yisrael at the hands of Bavel. Right? It's most of the time when Bavel arrives in the scene, Ashur has been defeated, and instead of having the calm and the quiet that was expected after Ashur was defeated, Bavel comes in the scene and it's like this, within a few decades, conquers Eretz Yisrael, destroys the Mikdash, etc. And he's in tremendous distress. First 2 chapters of Habakkuk basically correspond with Eov in many ways. He's complete with the same problem. He's taking the same mindset as Eov Kavishmaya. Now he comes and he once more he returns to this theme in a sense. It's a theme of the problem that evil people, or in this case an evil nation, is riding high, and he's in great distress. So that's what it begins with. If you want, Chabakuk on the Shigionot, what he thinks are things which are incomprehensible. Right? Shigion in the sense, I can't figure out what's going on. In other words, it's incomprehensible to me. Now let's now back to the text. He begins with a statement. He's addressing Kodesh Baruch Hu here. Hashem shamati shimacha yareti Hashem pa'alecha b'kerev shim chayeu b'kerev shim todia b'rogez rachem tiskor. He says like this: I heard all about you. Shamati shimacha yareti. I tremble. Palcha b'kerev shanim chayeu. He's asking for God to intervene in the world. Please intervene. B'rogez, in times of distress. Rachem tiskor. Right? When you say tachton, don't forget, you always need a comma over there. B'rogez rachem tiskor. In times of distress, have rachmanas and have compassion upon us. Now, what happens next? Gives a description of Ma'amad Har Sinai. And this description of Ma'amad Har Sinai is the reason, of course, that we read Haftorah and Shavuos. Let's go back and take a look at the text. Eloka miteman yavo. God will come from the south. V'kadosh me'ar Paran Sela. And the Holy One will come from Paran, which is also in the southern desert. Kisa shamayim hodo. His glory covers the sky. Utihilato. And his praise, or his glory in some form or another, malah haaretz. V'noga ka'or tiyeh. His presence radiates light. Karnaim miyadolo. Once more, light is radiating in the forms of rays. Rays of light radiate. B'sham chevyon uzo. And hard to know what chevyon uzo means exactly. But whatever it means, that there are multiple suggestions, it means that's somewhere where his glory resides. Lifanav yelech dever. In front of a plague goes forth. It's a reshafilir aglav, and fire from his raglaim. Amad v'imoded eretz. Amad v'imoded eretz. The word v'imoded is not clear. It seems to be he caused it to collapse. Right? Limotet is what Dat Mikra suggests. I think reasonably so. Ra'av v'yater goyim. V'yater goyim. I'll use the Malbim here. He causes it's from the word nitur. Nitur means to jump. He causes goyim to jump about, basically to move. He moves them around. He bombards, or he breaks the mountains. Shachu Givot Olam, he flattens once more the mountains. Halichot Olam Lo, he runs the world. What's the paraphrase is not an exact translation, but it doesn't really matter. So what's going on over here? He's mentioned his distress that a powerful nation, an evil nation, has conquered the world. A dictator rules the world. Those of us old enough to remember the Iron Curtain and communism, that's what's disturbing him. And he begins with a description of Mamad Arsina. And this is the crucial point here. If you look in Tanakh, post Chumash, Mamad Arsina is described, to the best of my knowledge, in a few places, not too many. One of them we're all familiar with. It's in Shirat Dvorah. Right? If you remember Shirat Dvorah, Hashem b'tzedcha miseir, b'tzadcha misdei Edom, Eretz Rash, Gam Shamayim Gam Harim Natfu Mayim, Harim Nazlu Mipnei Hashem. No, maybe I'll put it on nevertheless. Second. Moment. Right, this is the Shirat Dvorah. Hashem b'tzedcha miseir. When God left Seir, what's where he came to Sinai. B'tzadcha misdei Edom was when he came from the east to Sinai. Eretz Ra'asha, right, the world quaked and trembled. Kaim Shem Natfu, sky, the heavens dripped. Clouds drizzled. Harim Nazlu Pnei Hashem, the mountains melted in front of God's glory. Zes Sinai, right? This is Mamad Arsina, Pnei Hashem Elokei Yisrael. Okay, now let's look at another example, which Mamad Arsina is mentioned in Tanakh. This is another prominent example. This is Perek Samachet in Tehillim. It begins as follows. Yakum Elokim Yefutzu Oivav Yanusum Sav Mipanav. Right, all of God's enemies should run away, should flee from him. Kihindof Ashan Tindof. The way smoke scatters, that's how the God's enemies will scatter. Kihimes Donag Pneish. The way wax melts from the fire, Yovdu Rishaim, right? And Rishaim will melt down the same way. Mipnei Elokim. Etc. I'm skipping here. Now comes a description of Mamad Arsina. Elokim b'tzadcha lifnei amecha, when you went forth and from b'tzadcha by Shimon Sela in the desert, in the wilderness. Eretz Ra'asha, Avshaim Natafu, clear echoes of Shirat Dvorah. Yipeh Elokim zes Sinai. Right, this is taking a paraphrase of Shirat Dvorah. Geshem Nedavot. There are many more psukim. I'm not taking time to discuss all of them because we lack time, but there's one common denominator. Every time you mention Mamad Arsina post Chumash, in what context? It's a very surprising context. It's in the context of the battle against evil. Now, you would think that Mamad Arsina is ahistorical. And if you look in the Chumash, that's the impression you get. Right? Bnei Yisrael leave Egypt. They go to the wilderness. It's a detour. They're supposed to go from Egypt to Eretz Yisrael. However, they don't only start. They basically go on a detour. And right, they've left Egypt. They have to organize. They have to take a time out from history, get the Torah. Torah is ahistorical. Torah, its essence, is above time, is above place. Right, God is eternal. Eternity dwarfs history, and they go to the desert and purpose to the desert. And Chazal talk about the fact that Torah was given the desert because it's independent of any historical circumstance. Torah was given the desert because Torah exists outside of time and place. It's above everything. And in the Chumash, there's this clear timeout, which is what we read Pasha Shavuot yesterday and next week, or 2 weeks from now for some of you. What you'll see in Pasha Shavuot is you go Bamidbar, Naso, and all of a sudden in Bamidbar Perek Yud, Moshe Rabbeinu will approach Yisro and say to him, okay, it's time to rev up the engines. It's time to get into the wagons, because now we're moving forward. Right, the time out from history, the sabbatical is over, and now we resume the march, the historical march. But they really paused, and I think it's not just because they're afraid to go through the Plishtim. The detour through the desert is intentional because Torah is given the desert. Am Yisrael has to regroup. They have to be outside the desert. And that's the context you have in Mamad Sinai. And it's logical. So before, Torah at the end of the day indeed exists. Chazal tells Torah was written or whatever 2,000 years before creation. It exists on a platonic level way before the world was created. It's independent of the world. Yet, now, this is what happens in the first days of in the Haftorah, the first day. The Haftorah, the first day, the Merkavah, we talk about revelation outside time and history. Can you locate the Merkavah any place? Can you say, we know that Yechezkel is the person who gave the Nevuah. He had the vision. But does it have anything to do with historical circumstances? I would say not necessarily. I never done things somewhat different, I think, but I would say not necessarily. It's independent of anything. There's no time and place. So okay, Yechezkel's on the Har Kvar, but he could be in the Hudson, he could be in the Mississippi, he could be in the Nile, he could be in the Amazon. It's a uniform vision. And this is the point of after the first day. But in the second day, we basically follow the lead of Tanakh, and we choose one of these prakim. The lead of Tanakh is to basically, Mamad Har Sinai is a prelude to describing how God will defeat evil. And the message is that basically, when it says Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai, when the Kosh Baruch Hu descended on Har Sinai, he did not do that only to give the Torah. It was a policy decision to engage with the world, to get involved with the world. And when the Kosh Baruch Hu decided to give Torah and to give human beings this knowledge, or the mandate also to be active in Torah, it wasn't only that. He decided to descend into the world. It was exactly the opposite of what Aristotle thought. He decided to engage the world, and to engage the world doesn't mean only giving laws and only having a mishkan. It means to get involved in history. This is the whole idea of the sneh, that you descend into history and get involved in history. And going to basically, when Kosh Baruch Hu descends on Mamad Har Sinai, what he's really doing is he is deciding to engage Olam Hazeh and the created world in all of its variety, including the evil. And that means that if I want to say that God will fight evil forces, I preface it by Mamad Har Sinai, because that was his decision to get involved. Now, it's more than that, of course. And this takes to the second point. There are two ways in which God works through history. We're all familiar with Gat Esther. Gat Esther, right, it's human action, and God allows human beings, or he assists human beings. He provides them with assistance, with inspiration, with whatever, however we call it, he facilitates their actions, but it's based on human activity. And of course, there are many such examples in Tanakh, in which, right, Yeshua ben Nun goes to war, and the Melech goes to battle, and so on and so forth. And because we fight evil through human agency. But there are also times which Kosh Baruch Hu he descends, he rolls up his sleeves, and he does all the work. And now, to give you an example, and once I wrote about this in Book of Haftorah, you're welcome to look at later on at leisure. This is what happens in Haftorah first day Sukkot. Right? There's a battle with the nations, and what happens? God sends an earthquake. And basically, he does all the work alone. He suspends day and night. There'll be no day and no night. The most basic natural elements are suspended because basically God takes control of Olam Hazeh. And that's what happens over here in Habakkuk as well. It's the same idea that not only does God engage the world, but he goes to war here, and this is not by assisting human beings. Basically, Kosh Baruch Hu takes the reins, he takes command, he does it all alone. Interestingly enough, the Radak interprets most of the Haftorah as discussing Gog and Magog. And Gog and Magog is the same thing. Gog and Magog also have earthquakes, and you have nature suspended. Since we have very little time left, I'll just point out one or two psukim which are crucial psukim in this context. Take a look over here. First of all, he talks about God doing all the work. Habin Harim Chara Hashem, right? God works through the rivers. He overrides nature. Rivers, seas, and this is an important pasuk here. Yudalef Shemesh Yareach Amad Zvulo L'or Chitzecha Yahalechu L'noga B'rak Chanitecha. The natural order of sun and moon is suspended, and rather light is caused L'noga B'rak Chanitecha, from the flash of the divine armor. Is what you get. That's really what's happening. You get from the divine armor, you get the light. Simply put, the whole what we have later on, and you have to trust my word or look up the Mefarshim later on. There's a whole battle here, which God goes to fight evil, and he does it through supernatural means. Or put differently, when God reveals himself, when he fully reveals himself, nature is suspended. Now, he can negate nature. When God didn't reveal some of the word, you could say he negates nature. Over here, it's somewhat different. He doesn't negate the world. He doesn't negate creation, but he overrides nature. He basically, it's like you have to think for a moment, just to give a metaphor, think of a child in school, and he's having trouble with the school bully. So sometimes you can help. Sometimes the parent or the teacher or the principal will help the kid. He will empower the kid and reinforce him. They'll be able to stand up to the bully himself, and he'll be able to handle it on his own. And behind the scenes, you'll give him a little assistance. Of course, you always have the scene, of course, in which 2 8-year-olds are bullying a 7-year-old, and all of a sudden the 30-year-old appears in the scene, and you can, of course, imagine how things continue, because the 30-year-old basically intervenes, and that's the end of the whole encounter. And this is what Habakkuk is talking about. Bavel is fighting Ashur, and Bavel is fighting Israel, and Bavel is conquering the Near East. And also, Kosh Baruch Hu appears like the adult who intervenes in this playground fight between 8-year-olds and 7-year-olds. And this is the point, basically, Mamad Har Sinai. It's the point of that Gilui Shechina is also to make the world a better place, not only through the laws, but also at times through basically putting evil in its place. Now, there's one caveat, and I'll have to conclude with this because of the time, or before the final point. Let me just mention the Rambam Mor Nevuchim tries to steer clear of this. The Rambam Nevuchim, it's Chelik Bet Perek Chavtet, it's 229. The Rambam goes out of his way to say wherever Nevi'im talk about supernatural events, they're all metaphors, and they never meant it. We talk about God basically controlling the sky, tearing the sky, destroying the sky, whatever. It's all a metaphor for powerful nations. And the Rambam basically discounts all of this as simply metaphorical, figurative speech. But nevertheless, I do think that you have to take the shot. So now the caveat is one. Habakkuk is not describing what happened. He's describing what he's hoping for. And in this regard, this is a tefillah. This is not even a nevuah. It's tefillah l'Habakkuk v'al shigyonot. Look in the Radak, in the first pasuk. The Radak describes this basically being human speech. This is not. He says that basically this is similar to Tehillim. It is the exact same idea of Tehillim, that the person, in this case the Navi, is expressing his sentiments, his hopes, his inspiration. This is not. He's not speaking God's name. This is not Kol Mar Hashem. This is not Zeh Davar Shetzivah Hashem Leimor. This is Tfilah Chabukah Navi Shigionot. Now, Habakkuk is hoping, he hasn't realized. Nevertheless, what he's saying is, because I know it can and will happen, that already comforts me. The knowledge that Kosh Baruch Hu decided to engage the world that I got from Amad Har Sinai, the knowledge I know that Kosh Baruch Hu cares about the world and will get involved, even if at the moment he hasn't yet involved himself, this nevertheless will make me happy. And this is how he concludes the Haftorah. After he describes some problems towards the end, Ki teina lo tifrach, right? Things are not good. Shamati v'tugaz bitni. Things are not good at the moment. Ki teina lo tifrach v'gfanim. There's desolation at the time. Nevertheless, now whether this refers to Am Yisrael to Goyim, Mepharshim disagree. But his conclusion is, V'ani b'Hashem eloza, I'll be happy, I'll rejoice, Agila b'Elokei Yishi. Why? Ki Hashem Elokim chayli, God is my force and my strength. Whether or not, whether or not it has happened or not, I know it will happen. And therefore, in a sense, that calms him down and comforts him. It's like Eov saying in the middle of Sefer Eov, I know there'll be a happy end. And therefore, I can view things differently. So, in a sense, if I'll summarize, the point of the Haftorah is, this is a Gilush Shechina. And it's very different from the Torah. It's a Gilush Shechina we should recognize. Now, on the one hand, it's very different. It's God's glory and greatness, which is negating, in a sense, human activity in the human world. It's belittling man. It's dwarfing man. And in that regard, there's no the Merkavah. Like the Merkavah, in which we look to what's going on outside the world. In the Merkavah, we escape the world and we view the divine glory upstairs. In the second day of Haftorah, which balances it, we view how God's force and strength descend into our world to be active. So it will be supernatural. It will negate nature and will negate military and historical forces, but it's within our world. Because the point of Amad Har Sinai is Vayeved Hashem al Har Sinai, and because of that, Habakkuk says, even if it hasn't happened yet, I rest confident and happy that I know this will yet happen, and therefore I feel at calm and at peace to the Kosh Baruch Hu and the way he runs the world and his presence in our world. So, as it said, there's much more to be said, but time takes away whatever, our hopes are dashed by time, time and time again. So, I'll go over here, and once we're Chag Kasher V'Sameach, and B'ezrat Hashem, I hope this contributes somewhat to appreciate the Haftorah a little more, and best case scenario will contribute to taking a Farshim and trying to understand the Haftorah, and Chag Sameach, and B'ezrat Hashem will be able to give shirim face to face and not only electronically or Zoom-wise, but also panim panim. It says panim panim divrei lahavdil, panim panim divrei Hashem elechem bahar mitoch ha'esh. Be able to experience Amad Har Sinai and Matan Torah in these coming days, and I'm sure, given the circumstances, this will be a Shavuot which is unique and different than any other Shavuot, both because of the loss and the need and the comforting sense of meaning of Kosh Baruch Hu after loss, and also because of the sense that Atem Elokim Hashem Elokechem, Kosh Baruch Hu has given us also life, and it's conflicting feelings of loss and survival. We part in conflict with Baruch Hu in the Shavuot, and I'm sure it will be a meaningful experience. And each person will probably experience it slightly different, but the sense of both of loss and survival will make the meeting with Baruch Hu the Shavuot at least significant, both in terms of Torah and also in terms of history, and particularly in terms of Habakkuk's tefillah, in a sense. Chag Sameach, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rav Mosheh Lichtenstein. I very much appreciate for your words. And Rav Mosheh Tarragon has just joined us, and we'll just give him a minute to get organized and for everybody else to join. And at the same time, thank Rav Mosheh once again. The topic Rav Mosheh Tarragon is speaking on, is there one truth to Torah?